Welcome back, Nap Trappers. Hi, Beck.
Hey, Sal, how we going?
Good.
That's good.
You have got a question for us today.
I do have a question, and I thought we were going to be wrapping up our episode recording, but I did remember that this one question came through while I was on holiday, and I thought it was a really great one to touch on, and maybe get some information out there for our wonderful listeners because we feel that potentially this hasn't been covered. And while we have touched on reasons beforehand, I think it's a great opportunity for us to go a little bit more in depth. Shall I read the question from our wonderful
Please
listener?
do.
So from Liz, her question is, if my baby wakes but is not due a feed, for example, waking at 10:15, but has previously shown they can go into 11:50, and you can't get them to resettle other than in your arms, is it worth seeing out the wait period in your arms? The other option seems to me to be to let them cry it out, which I'm not keen on, or feed them early after a really good try resettling, like 60 minutes. Thank you so much. Love your potty.
Oh, thanks, Liz.
Which is lovely. So I'm reading that this little cherub, who I'm not sure the age of, but in any case, this little cherub can sleep until 11:50 p.m. and parents are sort of going, yes, great, this is going to be the new anchored feed time, which we talk about. So,
Yep.
if your little one is sleeping through a feed and shows you they can sleep a little longer, then we make that the new time frame. So this mum is now saying, okay, but what if they wake early again, and how long do I resettle for? Is it worthwhile just keeping them in arms because I can't settle any other way than that?
I think it's a
What are your
really
thoughts?
great question because now that I'm hearing it, you and I go on and on about just resettle, resettle, resettle,
Mm,
resettle, resettle at 5 a.m. But what
yeah.
does that actually look like? And what
Yeah.
do you do if you feel like it doesn't, if it's not working? Because this
Mm,
listener, Liz, has got absolutely the right idea. She has listened to, I'm guessing, the episode on our golden rules for weaning overnight
mm,
feeds, where we talk about exactly what you've just discussed, that you hold that new anchored time. But what to do in the leader? Because it's all well and good for us to say, oh, you just resettle them.
yeah, that's right.
Like it's just that easy. Like we all know what that means.
Yeah. And I guess it really boils down to if you are actively sort of sleep training or you're just
Mm.
testing the waters. And if you're testing the waters, then you make the rules up as you go along. You're
Yep.
not sort of held or bound by anything. But if you are wanting to actively sleep train and you're kind of looking to keep moving forward and use the very clear signs that your baby is giving you that they can, in fact, do these types of sort of stretches overnight, then we do want to make sure that we're having a really clear sort of response in order to make sure that the progress is maintained and they can actually progress further than that.
Mm.
So I'm thinking that you or Liz is doing some sleep work at bedtime so that the baby is self-settling. I'm going to assume that.
Yep.
So baby is self-settling at bedtime and potentially using some sort of technique, whether they're going back and forth to replug the dummy a couple of times or potentially sort of doing some pick up, put down, sleep lady shuffle, whatever they're doing, they're kind
Mm.
of using a technique in order to allow baby to put themselves off to sleep independently. And so I guess usually when we're sort of saying, okay, well, we're doing a bit of sleep work, if there's a 11:50 sort of marker that we're aiming for, we would say if baby wakes earlier, you resettle using your technique.
Mm.
So we would say if whatever your technique you're using at bedtime, we would resettle using that technique again for that particular waking. So if you were doing pick up, put down, for example, at bedtime, then at 10:15, when baby wakes, you would go in with pick up, put down, and you would confidently use that until baby goes back off to sleep. Regardless of if it takes 10 minutes or if it takes an hour and 10 minutes or
Mm.
an hour and a half, where
You need to
we're
follow through.
committing to seeing through because we're creating a really clear goalpost. And most babies who are aligned with this particular feed where they do a good stretch, so they're going down at bedtime, then they do a good stretch, and then they wake and they get fed to go back off to sleep. That first waking of the night where they are when they wake and they get fed back to sleep, because it can be realistic, for, let's just say baby is 7 months old and you're on the 4 hour sort of like pattern. Babies just get into a natural rhythm of, waking twice in the night to go back off to sleep and everything's hunky dory. But when you're sort of stretching and moving to longer periods of being asleep overnight, you kind of have to create these moments in time where you resettle so that baby learns that not every time I wake, I need a feed in order to go back down.
Mm.
And so these first wakings of the night have the potential to be quite long resettles because they are so ingrained with being fed back to sleep. So you just have to sort of often be really prepared for a lengthy settling time frame so that then you can create the really clear goalpost of, you're okay, it's time for nanais. I'm going to help you with this technique in order to get you back down, and create a clear goalpost so that night 2, when I go to use the same technique because of the habitual waking, that it becomes, oh, I understand what's happening here because mum and dad did the same, or mum did the same thing last night.
Mm.
And now now I understand what's going on. Like mum's going to settle through or see this through with the pick up, put down, or whatever technique you decide to use. And so the resettle gets easier, but usually on night 1, it is quite tricky.
Yes,
Does
because
that make
baby's
sense?
just not in on the because baby's just
Yeah.
not in on the plan, and I think it's really important to normalize it could be a lengthy resettle, whether that's
Yeah.
in your arms, out of your arms, depending on the technique. What I
Mm,
wouldn't do, which is I think part of the question, is I wouldn't bring that feed earlier because you had a go and it felt hard. And I say that with so much love of knowing how it can feel
mm,
hard. And that's where those moments of doubt creep in to think, or maybe
yeah.
this is hunger, maybe this is,
Mm,
maybe I do need to feed because this is feeling long.
mhm,
That's where your day work really matters. So if you've
mhm.
had, let's use your example, if this baby's 7 months old, have they had their 4 milk feeds? Have they had their 2 to 3 meals of salt, depending on where they are up to? Have they had appropriate wake windows? Great. This is not a caloric issue.
Mm,
Not that a baby's ever going to say no to a feed, but
yep.
that's when you can have that resolve to say, I'm going to resettle, and I know it's going to potentially feel messy and long because I am making change and this is
Yeah.
new for everybody. And
Mhm.
tricky thing is that there isn't a crystal ball, even for us as your sleep consultants to say, oh, it'll take 37 minutes and then baby will go back to sleep.
Mm,
And then 2 hours later, they'll wake and you'll offer your feed and you'll have your new benchmark timing.
mm.
It could be 10 minutes or it could be an hour and 10 minutes. But if you are rock solid and confident in your day work, you essentially see it through. If I'm to just speak it plainly, no
Yeah.
sugarcoating. That's us, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
that's it. Because you never, like, I always try and encourage my families to understand that you never see the benefit of what you're doing in that moment. That
mm,
really hard moment in time is setting you and your little one up for better results later on down the track.
mm,
So, if the resettle takes an hour and 25 minutes because, baby's like, what the hell? Like, don't you normally feed me? My God,
mm,
like, that's hard. But when you're doing the resettle and then you're thinking, gosh, this is not working. It doesn't feel like I'm getting anywhere. Trust the process, like
mm,
trust in the idea that you're building this repetitive response and then you're following that through with, you can fall back to sleep in another way other than feeding.
yep,
And then when your baby wakes again, like, the very next waking, the likelihood is that it's going to be after the 11:50,
mm.
after that anchored time.
Nearly
In which
always,
case,
yeah.
absolutely, yeah, you go in and you offer the nice big full feed, and then that signals to the internal clock that the feed is held in that particular time frame, and
Mm,
so it makes night 2 of the sleep work easier because now they have an understanding of the response that you're trying to achieve. When you go back in and start the same process all over again, they're like, "Oh my God, we're doing this again." But now they understand what it is that you're doing, and the expectation is that they need to go back off to sleep without the feed. Plus, also the internal clock is now starting to wire into calories being offered at a different time frame. So you're
Mm,
really you're switching up the habitual wake that is there with the calories ordinarily going in at sort of 10:15, 10:30.
mm.
You're switching that to a later time frame, but also developing and strengthening their skill set in order to be able to self-settle a little bit more easily and more independently. So there's a few things that are going on there which make the resettle really tough. But the key is if you're wanting to make change and make it permanent, then to follow through and to keep going because your future self will love you for it. And you don't see the benefit of what you're doing in that moment. That comes the following night.
Yeah, which
So,
is why it's so easy for us to say, "You
mm,
just resettle," um,
yeah,
hence this great question. You just resettle purely because we just constantly see the next night and the next night because that's the
yeah,
work that we do when we follow families through. So that's why it's
mm,
so easy for us. It's definitely
yeah,
not because it's not hard in the
yeah,
moment. It's just
yeah,
we see the future of where this is headed and what you
yeah,
will feel at the next wake up and the next night and the next night,
yeah,
which is why your perseverance and feeling confident in the day and going into the night is so
mm,
important. I think, can we also just quickly define, because you mentioned if you were sleep trained, you need to sort of decide, are you just
yeah,
working, dipping your toe into making some change, or are you actively sleep training? I think it
mm,
might be worth, and if you've got a different definition, Beck, jump in, just defining for listeners what that sort of differentiation is. So when at least I talk about sleep training, I'm talking about teaching and supporting a baby to fall asleep independently so that then they've got those skills to use in between sleep cycles whilst
mm,
we're resettling, rinse and repeat multiple times overnight and most likely eventually for naps. But it's the transition that they make from awake to asleep on their own.
mhm,
And so the reason I think that's important is that there is also a the thing that jumps out to me in this question is also the in arms approach, if it's the
yeah,
only thing that's working and that the only alternative feels like cry it out. And that's the next thing I
mm,
sort of want to just define is that cry it out is where you put your baby down in their cot and you say night night and you don't go back in.
mm, until 7 o'clock the following morning.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. That is the definition of extinction and cry it out. And in arms resettling and extinction are most definitely not your only two
only
options.
options.
There are
Yeah, yeah,
lots of things in between. But the reason why I think it's important to sort of touch on those definitions is that if you are just starting to make change, then holding your baby until they go back to sleep as a starting point is absolutely appropriate.
yeah,
So what I might say to a family, let's say we're starting on a Friday, we have our call on a Wednesday, I'll say your only homework in the lead up is to try and work to the schedule, get your day feeds in,
mm,
get to bedtime in the best shape you can. It doesn't have to be
mm,
perfect. And rather than feeding, 6 times overnight, we're going to be doing these two, which means you need to do something else instead of feed back
mm,
to sleep 6 times. And I don't care what it is. We are just
yeah,
making change, shifting
mhm,
the status quo and the habit. So if it's holding your baby until the next feed, yes, that could be lengthy and everyone's tired, but you have to start somewhere. It could be
yeah,
that you're going to bounce them back to sleep on the fitball instead. Pass them to your partner who's going to pace up and down the hall. It doesn't matter. It's
yeah,
making that initial change, in which case, absolutely in arms, fabulous. No
yeah,
problem. And you may find that over a couple of nights you have to do it less and less and less. Or you don't have to
exactly.
do it for as long, I should say. That's probably a better way of saying it. If, however, you are then at the point where you're wanting to work on sleep training and the goal is independent sleep, then we need a resettling technique that will actually foster that goal of
Mm,
awake to asleep on their own. And that's not
mhm,
going to happen in arms. In arms will become the new this is what happens when I wake.
Yeah, like the prop as such.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that
So
make
I
sense
guess
as to why that's relevant
absolutely.
to the question? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was really, really important to highlight that. I think also too with the sleep training side of things, there is 100%. I'm absolutely with you. It is moving from needing a lot of assistance to being able to settle independently. And why it's really important to start shifting some of these feeds, so why we do resettle and we hold these anchored sort of time frames in. So when our babies do shift and move a little bit later, and then they do wake slightly earlier, and why we resettle is because we need to create opportunities to strengthen the skill set of being able to wake and return back to sleep without needing props. And
Mm,
sometimes what happens is we get into a really great pattern of baby goes down at bedtime, self settles, and then wakes once or twice overnight, is fed back to sleep, and then they have an amazing night and they wake up at 7, which for some families is great. But if you've got a baby that's sort of older and doesn't quite need all those feeds, then we need to create opportunities to use the technique to strengthen their
mm,
skill sets so that we move away from the feeding to sleep and, transition those calories back into the day or redistribute those calories back into the day so that we can have these moments of really nice long periods of time. And uh, so it is important to hold where the green light that your child is
mm,
giving you. I can go until X amount of time and I can do that organically. I've just shown you I can do that and holding that so that the next night when, they have woken at 11:50 and now they're sort of waking earlier. No, 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 you're okay. You can go
mm.
later. Let's keep
Yeah.
progressing. Let's keep moving forward rather than floating back and forth and sort of not really having a clear
Mm,
plan of where you're going. So in arms, definitely you can hold. And if baby woke at 10:15 and you were sort of loosely, you're not really sleep training, you're just trying to hold until the 11:50 and get to that time frame. Absolutely, like you said, Sally, just commit until
mm.
11:50 and then
Yeah.
feed.
And feed at the next
Totally fine.
waking and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
or feed and
Be
then pop down and moonwalk out of the room.
Yeah, because if you're finding that you're resettling and then you're putting baby back down and then they're waking like 2 seconds after they go down and then you're having to do the whole resettle all over again,
Mm.
pointless. Just hold. Just commit to the hold, commit to
Yep,
the resettle in
yep,
arms. Make it easy on yourself. Take a
yep,
blanket in there. Keep
yep.
yourself nice and warm. Do a bit of like scrolling on your like whatever.
Late night shopping.
But yeah, but there is value in holding that feed at
Mm,
11:50. There's absolute value in it, whether you're sleep training and you're using a technique and you're following that all the way through, or you're committing to the hold, and in which case you're just retraining the internal clock to expect calories at a later time.
mm. The other thing I just thought was that there is a potential scenario where maybe baby has slept, let's say, from bedtime until I think it was 11:50
Mm,
for 2 or 3 nights in a row, needing no resettling in between, and then on the next night,
mm,
randomly, we have a waking at, let's say, 10:15. I would also have a look and take from those 3 previous nights that your baby has self-settling skills in between. They
mm,
have absolutely linked multiple sleep cycles to get to 11:50. And so if you are looking at this from more of a sleep training, sleep consultant angle,
mm,
then I would say maybe in arms is not actually necessary, that you could be doing a less hands-on version
mm,
to hold steady with enticing those sleep self-settling skills rather out, because the last 3 nights they have absolutely been able to also show you those skills
mm.
rather than adding in a new heavy-handed prop, which then may potentially the next night, "Oh, hang on, my favorite person comes in and holds me. I don't have to do that anymore."
Yeah.
The whole self-settling thing, and potentially that becomes the new thing that I mean, of course you can wean it out, no problem. But if that is your scenario where sleep has gone, they have been consolidating all by themselves, I
Mm,
would be looking at a little bit less is more. You can still be in the room, you can still be hands-on, but still encouraging that great self-settling that they were able to do. So it's kind of like we hold steady, we anchor in the later feed time, but we also anchor in the opportunity to flex the
yeah.
self-settling muscle as well, because both of
Mm,
which your baby has been doing the last few nights in my
mm.
made up scenario. But it's
Yeah,
one that we
yeah.
see.
No,
It's
yeah,
the
all
things
the
we think
time.
about.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I think also too is that if you are working on sleep, everything is everything that you're doing through the day is creating opportunity for that resettle to be easier for you, and why
Mm,
it's really important to follow through. So, if you are going down like not the dipping your toe in route, but the sleep training route, and why you want to hold steady using a technique with the resettle, and that's why we're saying resettle, resettle, resettle,
mm,
is because everything that you're doing through the day is aligning to that moment. To one, it doesn't have to look easy or simple, or that it's working in that moment, but trusting the process and the fact that once you follow through and you do create that goalpost, that the next day when you apply all the things through the day, it does make it easier for baby to be able to sort of get to that next reset or the following night, and for it to be easier. And why we're working through the day is everything aligns. So like the less calories that they get overnight. So the redistribution means that they're getting more calories in through the day, so that they can do the longer stretch a little bit more easy. So they are resettled at 10:15 more easily, because they've got more calories in through the day. Um, the whole process is
mm.
aligned to make that resettle easier, not just that one moment. So, um, yeah, that's the power of having a a solution created specifically for you.
Yeah.
Understanding the why behind it.
But great question.
Such a great question. And so glad Liz asked that,
Mm,
because it probably hadn't occurred to me until that moment that
me
maybe we
either.
hadn't really spoken about resettling and why it's important and all the things.
What
So,
does it even mean? Because we were talking about this before we hit record, that um, we have to remember that just because we understand or we know,
mm,
it doesn't mean that everyone else does.
yeah,
And so it makes total sense why we would just
yeah,
be rabbiting on about, yeah, you just resettle. Oh, hang on.
yeah,
What
yeah.
does that
What does
look
that
like?
look
What are
like?
my options here and
Yeah.
why?
And I also think that there is misinformation out there about what a resettle would look like, and
Mm,
putting numbers on resettling. I never put a number on a resettle, because
as in how
I
long it will take.
how long it will take.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just don't put a number on there, because I just know that the following night is going to be so much easier if you do the
Yep.
first. And if we're putting a cap on the resettle, for example, 45 minutes, and then we rock, hold, pat, feed, cuddle all the way off to sleep, we're going to reinforce the idea that our little ones need to cry for 45 minutes in order to
Yep.
go back off to sleep. Plus, it reinforces the idea that not only do I have to cry, but I actually do in fact need all the jazz to get off to sleep, in
Mm,
which
mm.
case all of those tears that you've been listening to, maybe some little ones aren't that upset, but there are tears involved a lot of the time.
Mm,
45 minutes worth of tears have been wasted.
mm,
Like, they've been
yes.
wasted. And
Yes, that's a good
I don't know
point.
about you, Sally. I mean, I do know actually. We are in the camp of minimizing tears wherever possible, because we don't actually like hearing our own little ones cry. We
No,
don't expect anyone else to love hearing their child cry either.
it needs to
So
be
we
productive. If there's going
productive.
to
Yeah.
be tears, it needs to be productive. I even remember 2 years ago, maybe I did a 2-week package with a family, and I had geared them up for the potential extinction burst where, nights one,
Mm,
two, three go swimmingly well. And then I geared them
yeah.
up that you never know, tonight might not go so well. You might have a lengthy overnight waking. Resettle, resettle, resettle.
Yeah.
And I went to sleep. They did their thing.
Yep.
And when we checked in the next morning, there had been a 2-hour lengthy overnight
Yeah.
waking. And that wasn't full blown 10 out of 10 escalation the whole time, but it was
Mm,
a slog, definitely. And there were
yeah.
definitely tears. And I was so impressed that they were able
Yeah.
to commit to that resettle. And you know what? every single night after that was a breeze.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
I knew that was possible, and I knew that's why we wouldn't have to do night one, so to speak, over and over again. But I also appreciate how hard, particularly after a few good nights, that would have been. But
Yeah,
that is why we say commit to the resettle, particularly if you're actively sleep training.
exactly. Yep. Your future self will
Excellent.
love you for it. I
All
cannot
right. Well,
stress that enough.
yeah,
So
yeah,
hard.
yeah.
Yeah.
Everything we suggest has a reason. It's not
Mm.
just, oh, just have a go. Um,
We reckon
yeah.
that will work.
Yeah,
We know
let us
it
know
will
in the
work.
morning. No, particularly about these hard
Yeah.
things because we just do it all the time. We see it. But that was a great question. So thank you, Liz.
Thanks, Liz. I will send her a message and let her know that this is going to be live for her very shortly. So I'm sure she'll be super impressed. But
Amazing. Lucky
we love
Liz.
hearing your questions, and please, as always, send them through.
Definitely.
And I think you're going to be teeing something up pretty quickly or pretty soon about so that we can get those
Yes, for Sleep
questions
Detectives, which is
out.
our other second episode each week where we we don't dedicate a whole episode to one question. We just sort of
Oh, yeah.
shoot from the hip and rapid fire-ish
Yeah.
answer your baby sleep questions. But we have been so lovingly inundated that I am going to create a Google form so you can submit your question. I will say we do have a huge amount of questions that come through, which is amazing. If you cannot wait because there's every chance that a question gets missed, do not grin and bear it. Book in with one of us or whoever you trust and make a plan, because you don't have to just wait for this too shall pass or wait for us to answer that question. Sleep support is always available.
Absolutely. We would love to help you, as always.
Definitely. And good luck resettling tonight. It's just that easy.
Yeah. Oh,
We'd
no,
be
that
out of
sounded
a
like
job
an
if
evil
it was. Off to plot more resettling
that's
techniques.
true.
All right,
Okay.
now, Travis, that was a fun little episode. Thanks, Beck.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Catch you later.
Bye.